Not too long ago, Merck really rechanged your performance management system. Can you share a little bit about what's different from this one versus the old one?
Yeah, so we changed it, and I would call it updating it and modernizing it. I wouldn't suggest that it was a big sort of overhaul, but let me tell you how we did it a little bit, and then it'll make sense in terms of what we did. We decided we didn't want to run out right away, as some companies had been doing, and get rid of ratings and change it. We wanted to be very, very thoughtful about it and make sure we sort of put it in the context of what are we trying to accomplish as a company. So we watched what other companies were doing and did a lot of talking to them to learn from them. Particularly companies who had eliminated ratings, we were trying to understand how did you then tie it to compensation, because we very much wanted to continue to be a pay-for-performance culture. We also talked to our executive committee members about, so what do you want to see in a performance management system? Because we wanted to make sure that it met the needs of our business and how we're trying to drive our business forward. Then we used crowdsourcing technology, and we went out to over 10,000 of our employees and got their input around, if we were to make changes, what types of changes would they want to see. A couple changes that we made. One is we were very, very surprised. We thought the ratings thing was going to be a no-brainer. Overwhelmingly, our people said, we want ratings. We don't want you to eliminate ratings. We think it's important to know where we stand.
And was that it? Was that they were afraid, employees were worried that they wouldn't know their standing?
Well, we had a system years ago where it was just a little bit more oblique and transparent, and I think they felt like, no, we need to know where we stand. But what they did say was, you have these 5 ratings. The labels aren't, top, upper, middle. They weren't motivational. And we're spending a lot of inordinate amount of time trying to differentiate people within those 5 categories. So they said, simplify it. So we ended up coming up with 3 ratings, and we have no forced distribution. But what they said was, it's much easier to differentiate the people who've really had a chance to hit it out of the park. So we put a cap on the outperform, the top, to 20%, and the rest was up to them. People felt it was incredible, incredibly easy. We just went through it this past performance year, and they weren't spending hours in rooms trying to agonize these small differentiations and then trying to explain those to people. We also did some other things. We took our restricted stock unit, which was 3-year cliff vest, and people want that a little bit more frequently, so we did a third. They vest a portion every year. Then we went to the coaching and the feedback, because we were trying to get people off of this annual cycle of twice a year, mid-year and year-end, you get feedback. And what we did was we're testing, we're actually piloting it in a couple of locations now, a mobile app that allows people to provide feedback to their colleagues. Data's not in yet, we'll see how that goes. We also encourage managers to do more feedback, and we came up with this thing we called Build the Best Teams. We tailored it to all of our 8,000 people managers, and we just went back to basic 101 people management, because having these difficult conversations are hard for people, and they don't know how to always do it well. So we installed that, and then on top of that, we launched a global recognition platform. We call it Inspire. And people use their mobile apps, and they can say thank you. They can, I'll go out to a plant and the people have done a great job. On the way back, I create a video and thank them, and I ship it and send it to them. So I get it to all of them. You can give points, which people can then convert over time to like gift cards. And if you did something really big, you can give cash. And of course, we have guidelines around it. And that was our way of saying, thank people, recognize people every day along the way. And it's a really user-friendly platform, and people are using it all over the company, and they love it.
So you are finding really positive feedback from that sort of...
Incredibly positive feedback. When I was at the top 200 meeting, I was amazed at how many senior leaders came up and said, we love it. I mean, partly it's user-friendly. Everybody can use it, even if they're not that technologically literate. The reception, because we use it mostly lower down below the VP level, And just getting a thank you from people, it's amazing.
It is amazing. We've forgotten kind of how important that is throughout it.
Yeah.
But it sounds like you also spend a lot of time on the training part, like you were talking about going back to basics.
Yes.
And that. So that sounds really time intensive and probably expensive. But you see real value to the organization going forth, investing that kind of time?
We absolutely do. And we did two things. We asked people to go through and upward feedback. We took like 10 dimensions in giving good feedback and coaching. We created items, and then we had people be able to give feedback on their leader. So all the people managers had to get upward feedback on how they're doing. And then they then set up a conversation with their team. And if you had fewer than like 3 or 4 people, their data would not get shown because we kept it anonymous. But it gave a leader a baseline to say, how am I doing? And in what areas am I doing really well? And where do I need to continue? And then we had them all go and sit down, and they had to have a conversation with their teams. And now we're doing coaching sessions, but they're all web-based. We don't get people in a room. I mean, we're a global company, but they are required to go online and listen to the webcast.
And this sort of additional training really pays off, you think, in terms of employees being able to understand better what their expectations are and then learning and being able to perform
I think so, but
better.
time will tell over time. And as we're experimenting with this mobile app, we'll see. Again, I think people are great at giving good feedback. What I want to see over time is the constructive feedback, because that's really the feedback that helps us develop, when people can say, you could have done this a little bit better.
So a couple of times now your PhD in IO psychology has come shining out when you've mentioned we're waiting to see the data. We haven't yet seen the data. So can you talk a little bit about the importance of analytics and data in HR and how it helps us make decisions and drive the business forward?
Yes, well, obviously, given my background and the fact that I had a minor in statistics, I'm very data and fact driven when it comes to driving decisions, and try not to overly rely on anecdotal evidence, because a lot of line managers are more comfortable when it's anecdotal evidence. And one of my favorite questions that I always ask is, what problem are we trying to solve? So I think data analytics are critical. I've actually beefed up the data analytics group within HR at Merck. But one of the things that I've learned, though, over the years is that we used to have people, IO psychologists, people with economics backgrounds, strong financial backgrounds, and they knew how to come in and crunch numbers. What they didn't know how to do was to understand the business, ask the right questions, analyze the data, and then frame it in a way that made sense to a typical line manager. So the people who are in our workforce analytics group, they have not only the analytical, statistical background, but also some consulting background. So I can put them in front of a vice president, and they can work with the HR business partner and really help frame the right questions and the right answers.
So it really sounds like for newer HR professionals, really honing and developing those skills in analytics is going to be critical going forward.
Yes, and we can only have so many people that have the deep analytics. And so what we're doing is we're supplementing that group, and we're helping we just purchased a data analytics package, and we're teaching all of our HR business partners how to pull data out, how to look at data, but we have them paired up with one of our workforce analytics people so they can help them and sort of teach them over time how to utilize the data. And then when it comes to really complicated data, regressions and things like that, they'll help them with that.
And finally, here at the Center for Executive Succession, naturally we have to ask about succession. So can you share a little bit about what you think of as HR's role, and particularly your role as the head of HR, in CSuite Succession?
Yeah, it's a great question, and I think we all have a huge role to play. And I always say, especially on CEO succession, the CHRO and the CEO and the board should be sort of partners in the whole CEO succession. You should be deeply, deeply involved in that. And then obviously we should be working closely with our CEOs on the other C-suite succession. So I think in my opinion, one of the greatest roles that we can play is to bring some structure to the process. making sure that we have a discipline of forcing people to think about where the business is going, what are the skills for the future, because a lot of times people like to shortcut that process. And unless they really think that through, then they might think about the skills in the same way the incumbent has the skills. So I like making sure we've got the right process, that there's rigor in the selection or assessment of the people that we're looking at, that we have a timeline for their development. How long is it going to take? What roles do they need to have? How do they get exposure to the board, for an example? So process, I think, is important. But I also think we play a role, I like to call it the constructive agitator. I think we need to force people to ask the right questions and have the courage to make sure that we're asking the right questions, whether it's with the board or whether it's with our CEO. And then also making sure that our own personal biases aren't getting in the way in terms of the recommendations that we're making.
Again, Mirian, thank you very much for joining us here. It's truly an honor and a treat for us. So
Well, thank you. Thank you very much. It's good to be here.
You just listened to another CHRO Conversation. Today, Mirian Graddick-Weir of Merck shared her views regarding how talent drives business strategy and how this must include an inclusive culture and the use of data-driven solutions. On behalf of all of us who are associated with the Master of Human Resources program and the Center for Executive Succession here at the University of South Carolina, thank you for joining us.